So most people fail because they either underestimate what it'll take or they overestimate what it'll take.
Okay.
And both are valid. Okay. So both are valid, meaning that's the reason failure occurs. So certainty gap is about making realistic choices
Mhm.
which still build into your dreams.
Mhm.
Okay. But in a way that allows you to understand what your mental gaps are, what your emotional gaps are. So a lot of people take their phones and they're mindlessly scrolling because there's not a greater set of values in their life. There's
Yeah.
not a deeper anchoring. Now, don't get me wrong. I also get on TikTok to do research or Instagram to do research or look at reels. That's not what I'm talking about. The
Yeah.
point is, are you disciplined enough to know when to cut off and go, okay, now is the time for me to go and do deeper work?
Welcome everyone to another episode of Your Lab Central. Today I'm joined with Vidya. So Vidya, would you like to tell the audience why they should be excited about this conversation?
Well, let's see. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're in corporate, working in some company, it doesn't matter. If you want to get to leadership position, if you want to have a better life, if you want to feel more aligned mentally, spiritually, emotionally, as you go into your job, as you are sitting in your house with mom and dad asking you questions, well, I think this might be worth paying attention to.
So first thing that I can see is your name right there, My Future Now. So can you just tell me where it comes from and what does it lead to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, my future now, a lot of us think, okay, I'll get to that point when I get to that point,
Yeah.
so we postpone a lot of what we can do right now to the future
Yeah.
instead of saying, let me take charge of my future and make it a reality right now.
Right.
An example of this is somebody who wants to really grow in their business, right? Or even let's say start a business. And what
Yeah.
they do is they say, one day I will do that. One day I will travel.
Mhm.
One day I will find a relationship that's satisfying to me.
Mhm.
And the thing is, we live for that one day instead of living for the thing that that one day will bring us. So,
Okay.
what this is about, My Future Now, is about taking control of the future and starting to carve out a future in the now. That's really what My Future Now is all about.
So there's one thing that's called living in the present, okay, and there's one thing that's about living in the future where people are just preempting, yeah, this is what I need tomorrow or something of that sort. Uh, but how do we flip this to the fact that we are living in the present and working towards the future so that we get what we want tomorrow?
Okay. This is again a great question because most people are not living in the present. What they're doing is they're living in the past or in the wannabe future that they're trying to create.
Right.
Their mind is, I should be doing that, or oh my God, I did that in the past. I should never
Yeah.
do that,
Hmm.
you know? And
Yeah.
that's where their headspace is. And these are all the patterns in our head where the stories keep on running on a round robin, doing a circle and number on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what this is about is realizing that in presence, you realize the gift of the present moment, which means you're very well aware of how the past distorts the present and the
Yeah.
future also distorts the present. So, it's
Okay.
really about taking control of this moment and living in the moment without being rash and abrupt. It's about having that clear vision. It's not about just jumping in and doing anything and everything. Oh, I wanted to jump off, Mount Shasta, and I'm going to do it now. Well, no, you need to plan for that, right? You
That's
can't
good.
just go to Mount Shasta if you're sitting in India. So you have to first buy your ticket. You have to make a plan of when you want to be there with season and all these things. So there have to be steps. And the steps are what you bring in the now. Then you live in the energy of what you want to create in the future. And
Mhm.
I'll say this, having been there, living in the energy of what you're trying to create is a lot harder than people think it is because our negative self-talk comes into
Yeah.
play.
Mhm.
Human brain is wired to attach to the negative,
Okay.
and so we're constantly playing this game of oh my God, I'm living in the negative, and then trying to switch to positive. But the
Hmm.
thing is, reality sits between positive and negative,
That's right.
So it's about bringing that reality and then taking concerted strategic action toward the reality you want to create.
Right. Now, since you mentioned steps, I'd like you to share if there's a specific set of steps that you've created or you help other people with, right? I don't know if you want to just tell us what's the first step that we can take, or if you have a full framework.
Yeah, no, I do have a full framework. It's called the True Resonance Method. It's a
Mm.
five-step framework to address what I call the certainty gap. And what
Yeah.
is the certainty gap? The certainty gap is, where are you right now?
Uh-huh.
And where would you like to be?
Hmm.
Okay. So now between these two, there is uncertainty
Yeah.
because you don't know that future thing will happen or not.
Hmm.
So you're doubting yourself, whatever that talk is, or, I don't have the financial means, I don't have the physical means,
Yeah.
I have priorities that will take me away. All this dialogue that happens between where you want to be and where you actually are is what I call the certainty gap. Now,
Uh,
why is this important? Because when we feel certain that we can do something, the way we show up to do it changes. We have that assurance and belief in ourselves that we
mhm.
can move forward in a way that is cohesive to the greatest priorities that we hold in this lifetime. And everybody has a deep set of priorities. Most of it, most people live in the unconscious about it, but
Yeah.
it's about bringing those to light
Hmm.
and not overlaying other people's priorities into our life. It's instead understanding what our true purpose is, what our core priorities are, and stepping in and being courageous enough to own that in this lifetime. So it's acknowledging your core priorities, core values in life, and understanding what your zone of genius is as far as work is concerned, so that you can take your attention and intention toward the future you want to create.
But I still couldn't understand how are we filling this certainty gap right here. If you could just
Mhm.
elaborate.
Yeah, so the way you fill it is by taking strategic steps, right? So the first part is you understanding that you want to create something different than what you have right now.
Yeah.
Okay. That is your future desire. Okay. And we all have desires. Like, I want to be a millionaire. I want to have a child. All of these are valid desires. It depends on the person, right?
Yeah.
So you understand that it's for all of us on this planet, we each have a core set of priorities that's unique to us. It is
Yeah.
not replicable to anybody else on the planet. Okay, so it's about understanding that piece and then looking at where our gaps are right now. Now, some are going to be realistic gaps. If you don't have the money to fly from India to California, you can't get to Mount Shasta. That's just a reality.
Yeah.
But if you're really serious about getting to Mount Shasta and jumping off, climbing Mount Shasta, whatever you want to do, right? Then you're going to make that a priority, make a plan. I'm going to put, X number of rupees, dollars away every month so that I can accumulate this much in airfare. I am going to plan to buy the gear and the equipment I need to get to Mount Shasta and take that trek up there, right? And then I need a guide. Whatever you do
Right.
in the form of plan, laying out the steps. So most people fail because they either underestimate what it'll take or they overestimate what it'll take.
Okay.
And both are valid. Okay. So both are valid, meaning that's the reason failure occurs. So certainty gap is about making realistic choices
Hmm.
which still build into your dreams.
Hmm.
Okay. But in a way that allows you to understand what your mental gaps are, what your emotional gaps are. Now, if you're scared of going in a plane, that's an emotional gap you already have in the
Yeah.
process. So
Yeah.
we have to get you past that emotional fear of flying in a plane before you get to Mount Shasta. So in my own life, when I was trying to live the life of my dream, it was like I wanted to travel. Okay. But I was afraid that it would offend my friends. If I left California for, lengthy periods of time, I would lose my friends if I left them. I would
Yeah.
lose my grounding if I left them. So these are all things where we're living in other people's priorities.
Mhm.
So it's about how did I learn to be afraid that I'm going to lose my friends? Well, where does that happen? It happens in our childhood, it happens through our experiences. So
Yeah.
this is what you take, and you have to look at what is the cause of it behind the scenes so that you can move forward in a way that is realistic into the dreams that you have.
Now, you mentioned that people either underestimate or overestimate, right? But just from a personal perspective, I'm asking, isn't life all about uh, optimizing these choices that we are making so that failure does not occur, whether we underestimate slightly or hugely, or overestimate hugely or slightly, and then getting
Yeah,
to the path to success?
absolutely. You nailed it. So the key word you used right there is optimization.
Hmm.
Okay. But a lot of people go on the extremes of this. Okay. They'll either not take action because in their mind it's such a big task, they can
Uh-huh.
never go there. Okay. But
Okay.
they'll say constantly, I want to one day do this.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they have never done anything to start doing that. So in their mind, there's still a pretty wide gap.
Right.
Okay. And then in their reality, there's also a big gap. So they have, you know, underestimated what it's going to take to get to that point.
Right.
Now, overestimation is the other extreme of it, which is, oh, that's going to be so easy. I don't need to do any planning.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, if you're sitting in India trying to go to California, you at least have to book a plane ticket. That's the
Yeah.
very least you have to do, right? So if
Yeah.
you're not making a plan, and the ratio of underestimation and overestimation
Mm.
is not near to each other. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's not wide apart. If it's very wide apart, you have a problem because this is where your certainty is. This is where you have accomplished your goal. If you've way underestimated, you're there. If
Mhm.
you're way overestimated, you're there. But in either case, you are failing because there's a wide gap.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you get closer to this,
Mhm.
now you can make micro adjustments in your tactics and strategies to get closer to what you were saying. That's what you were talking about when you said optimization, because you can get closer. Now you make it, you tweak it, you modify the plan, you get closer,
Yeah.
you get closer. But
Mhm.
if you don't take the action to,
Mhm.
make this a reality, the
Yeah.
decision first and then the action is never going to happen.
Uh-huh. Now, just getting some perspective from the conversation we've had, you're putting a lot of weightage to the emotional quotient or the emotions of a person whenever it comes to, say, success or failure. Uh, there are obviously a lot of factors, but from your own perspective, how heavy is the emotional quotient when it comes to, say, everyday entrepreneur or the everyday leader?
90%. The
Right.
reason it's at least about 90% is because most of us think about it. We want to feel good
Yeah.
for a majority of the day. When we're not feeling good, we're like, we don't want to talk to anybody. We want to hide ourselves, run away, right?
Yeah.
Can you really make progress in that state? You can't.
Right.
Okay. So it's vastly different than positive and negative mindset. What we have to do is we understand that we have positive moments, we have negative moments, and it's about understanding how to work with these positive and negative moments that are the most important factors that you're going to take into consideration in whether your dreams are getting realized or not.
Yeah. Now, just this is a segment that I do every time, but as part of this conversation, since we're talking about emotions and from your experience, uh, there's this thing called social media in our lives, right? And everybody is using it. But the effect that social media has on the everyday person's emotions and how it kind of regulates not just dopamine rush and everything when you're scrolling through, right? From your experience, how have you been able to, like, I don't know, cut back, control the exposure, or how do you help others help control their exposure to this fluctuations that would happen in their emotions due to social media?
Yeah. Typically, what I have found is that if we are living in our highest priorities in life,
Hmm.
then social media, chat GPT, all of these things become tools in that process. We
Right.
don't become a tool to it. That is a big difference, right?
Mhm.
So a lot of people take their phones and they are mindlessly scrolling because there's not a greater set of values in their life. There's
Yeah.
not a deeper anchoring. Now, don't get me wrong. I also get on TikTok to do research or Instagram to do research or look at reels. That's not what I'm talking about. The
Yeah.
point is, are you disciplined enough to know when to cut off and go, okay, now is the time for me to go and do deeper work? Maybe it's taking, if fitness is a goal and you're sitting and scrolling social media all day, fitness is not happening by itself, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so a better strategy may be for you to walk around and scroll at the same time, you know? So so, but the point is, we have to find a way to accommodate the things in our life that is of deep, deep meaning to us.
Hmm.
For me, my fitness goals are really important. If I
Yeah.
don't get to them, then I'm not feeling good the next day. I'm not feeling like myself the next day.
Mhm.
Just another person that may not be the top priority, but what I've found, I work with thousands of clients. What
Mhm.
I found is that if we just focus all out on business and we're not taking care of our physical health, ultimately physical health starts to drop.
Mhm.
What I focus on is all dimensions of life to really start coming up ultimately on an equal plane. So whether
Mhm.
it's financial, mental, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, all of these dimensions have value in our lives. And ultimately, as we start to balance out the extremes of emotions we tend to go through, we find ourselves more balanced in all dimensions. Now, when you were talking about social media, one of the things is there's that immediate gratification that we get when we
Yeah.
get on that phone, that instant hit that we get, but we have to look behind and say, what is it that I was missing that in that moment that wanted me to actually pick the phone up and look at it to begin with? For
Yeah.
most people, it's loneliness. Okay, I don't have company, I don't have somebody who understands me.
Yeah.
Well, then you have to look at your life and say, are you doing something to change that in your life?
That's
What
right.
are you going to wait until 70, 80, 90 to change that? Because that might be too late,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's about it. You kind of summed it up very beautifully, right? And the part where you mentioned, there's another question that's just popped up in my mind. The whole balance thing that you mentioned, that mental, physical, financial, social. So these facets that we have in life and the dimensions that you mentioned, right? Now, kind of like frequencies that should be at the same wavelength or resonating, right? Just wanted to understand, how are you bringing the whole balance into your life? I'm sure it's a little different for every person out there, but from a mentor perspective, what's the steps that you suggest to getting into this balanced mode?
It's really about understanding, having clarity on your core priorities in life. A lot of people do not have that clarity. They think they know it, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't actually know it. And the subconscious is what is driving their actions almost 100% of the time.
Okay.
Fears of, okay, if I don't have enough money, then I can't, do this or whatever that is, right? Those fears are driving people. Oh my God, if I go to another place, I don't know if I can survive it. There
Mm-hmm.
are all these talks that come in. But, let me ask you this. When you were 6 months old, did you have those fears really?
No.
You didn't. So it's about going back to our true inner nature in a lot of ways And then understanding that all of these dimensions were present in us when we were in that formative state. Okay. And whatever has formed after that formative or during that formative state is what is continuing to define us now.
Mhm.
And we start to take charge. So now, when you attach this to the dimensions, what I found is ultimately, as you do that inner work more, you start to become naturally balanced in all of these dimensions.
Okay.
Why? Because you're emotionally more level. You're not likely to make rash decisions, you know. So, for example, women are famous for this. I don't know if I'm a good example of that, but a lot of women love to shop, right? This is not a racist or a sexist remark. It's just sometimes a fact, right?
Mhm.
A lot of women like to shop. Fewer percentage of men like to shop, actually. So when you look at this, if you go and spend your entire month's paycheck in the store,
Yeah.
then you're not going to build wealth.
Yeah.
Okay, that is a given. So when you buy something in the store, it's that, oh my God, I love it. So I have to buy it now. It's the
Yeah.
same as the phone. It's just a different outlet. Okay. So it's about understanding how those impulsive movements are impacting your life and instead coming into a steady, emotionally resonant space within yourself so that you can make decisions that are more grounded and more present. Then you start to become a little bit more certain in all of the dimensions of life and attract a more balanced set of dimensions in your life.
All right. Now, it's just nothing specific. This is just random. Since you mentioned the number of clients, if you had to put a number to it, how many people have you affected in your work?
Well, I think this is an easier question to answer that my mission is to actually impact 1 million
Okay.
people's lives. I hope I hit more than that.
Yeah.
As of now, I'm definitely in the thousands of people, so you can see I've set myself a goal that
Yeah.
is pretty challenging, okay? But if I don't challenge myself, then something outside of me is going to challenge me,
That's
okay?
right.
So I've learned the habit of challenging myself strategically, and I challenge myself in my emotions and my mental space. I
Yeah.
live and breathe what I coach people on. I'm not a coach who just takes a textbook and says, oh, or looks up ChatGPT and says, this is
Yeah.
how I'm going to coach a person. It's unique to that person because I
Yeah.
want to understand what's their driver, what's their innermost motivation in life. I guide myself in that way. And so my clients are guided in the same way. And
Mhm.
so, yes, the answer is thousands. I don't have a number right off the top of my head, but my goal and my mission is toward 1 million people in this lifetime.
Okay. So one last question. What is something that you're excited about these days that you're doing? Is there something that you're looking forward to in?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for me, I just sold my place in San Diego. It
Oh,
was nobody expected that I would do it
uh,
because everybody thought, oh my God, what a beautiful home she has created. She's going to keep it. But I actually made a decision within 1 month that I was going to sell it because it wasn't supportive fully of my mission on this planet.
mhm.
So and it was a tough decision for me,
Yeah.
really emotionally tough because I had a sustainable property where I had really, allowed it to be land for the nature and for the
Mhm.
butterflies and the bees and the habitat I'd created in the front and the back of the property. But what I realized was that I could not sustain it myself, having to travel so much. I travel quite a bit for my work. So it would be, very selfish of me to hold on to that and try to make it work given what I have. So I handed it off to somebody who was really inspired to work with it.
Mhm.
And so, I did this almost 30, actually more than 30 years back. I left India and moved to the United States with 2 bags.
Uh-huh.
It feels like I have done that again in a lot of ways, although this time I do have the benefit of knowing what to anticipate a little bit
Uh-huh.
more. But that's so important, right? Because experience makes us stronger in
Okay.
life. And it's so important to take that risk and go for it but the risk has to feel like it is working out. So we have to be able to see it in perspective of the larger dream and vision that we have. So that's really what I'm excited about, bringing my mission to 1 million people, traveling. I have a beautiful dog that travels with me. So traveling with her, and upholding that mission right now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vidya. Thank you for joining me in on this episode. It's been a wonderful conversation. We've gone from, I don't know, where we started, and now we're sitting here talking about so many different things. Thank you so much. Before we close, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they know more about you?
Yeah, thank you. So, for all your audience, I would love for them to come into Instagram and give me a follow there. And then, if they drop the word 10, I will send them the blueprint that I created for working with leaders and entrepreneurs. I created a 10-step blueprint for emotional intelligence in life and leadership. I would love to give that as my gift to your audience. So if they come in and just DM me the word 10, I'll know they came from the podcast and I'd be happy to share that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vidya. Thank you for joining in on this episode. To the audience who's been listening and watching, if you liked what we talked about, do leave a like. The comment section is always open for questions, perspectives. If you want to add, that's also an option. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe before you close. Thanks once again for joining in on this episode. Thanks for listening and watching. Thank you once again, Vidya, for joining me on this episode. Thank you so
My
much.
pleasure. Nice to have you here.